Our Georges de Latour Private Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon has been widely recognized as the benchmark Cabernet from Rutherford since its inaugural vintage in 1936. Our understanding of this legendary terroir comes from more than 120 years of creating rich, classic Napa Valley wines. Coming off a highly acclaimed vintage of 2019, which received a 100-point score from James Suckling and was also awarded his Wine of the Year for 2022, I am thrilled to present the 2020 vintage of this legendary wine. It has amazing complexity and quality despite a challenging vintage for the valley. The 2020 season began with a warm, dry winter and a mild spring leading to an early start. The summer then brought very cool mornings and very warm days, and then of course in September, we experienced disastrous fires that caused one of the most challenging harvests in the history of the Napa Valley. Thankfully, we were not as impacted by the fires as many others for a few reasons. First, given our location on the western Rutherford Bench, we were relatively protected from the fires that were mostly further up valley. Now, we did make a decision to stop harvesting any remaining blocks that were located north of the town of St. Helena, but luckily that area had already been mostly harvested by that point. We then kept every single lot separate in the winery and performed monthly laboratory and sensory analysis to ensure that we couldn't detect any negative impact on wine quality whatsoever. With all this attention to detail, I am extremely confident in the quality of our 2020 Georges de Latour Private Reserve from this unprecedented vintage, and I think that we're going to stand out in a really, really positive way. For the 84th consecutive vintage, this fabled Cabernet Sauvignon was primarily sourced from our iconic vineyards on the western Rutherford Bench that were planted by our founder more than a century ago. This wine was then produced in our state-of-the-art winery where the fruit was optically sorted, cold soaked for 7 days, and then fermented in a variety of stainless steel and concrete tanks at specific temperatures, aiming at preserving the freshness and highlighting that legendary Rutherford terroir. A portion of this wine was also fermented in French oak barrels, which provides early integration and really enhances that dense, rich texture that I'm looking for. It's then aged for 22 months in French oak barrels, with about 95% of them being new oak, and then upon blending, a small amount of Petit Verdot was added to complement the Cabernet, which really further enhances the wine's aroma and flavor profile. Moving on to my favorite part, which is actually tasting the wine. So first off, aromatically speaking, this wine is exploding out of the glass. You have this incredible dark fruit profile, this blackberry, cassis. There's something in here that reminds me of summertime in California. It's kind of like this Bay Laurel thing, incredible earthiness. It's almost like you're smelling the terroir of Rutherford in the glass. Extremely lively and very concentrated on the palate. You have that cassis and that blackberry just beaming through the center of this mid palate here. You also have a very, very significant amount of Rutherford Dust, which you would come to expect from this wine. And that's something that I describe as mostly a textural element. So it's this cocoa powder texture and flavor profile that hits you on the mid palate, melts into the finish. They're very, very well built and well structured tannins, so you know you've got the ageability, but because of their roundness, you have this approachability early on, which is quite unique. I think it's gonna last for years and years if you have the patience to let it do so. And that finish goes on for days. This is gonna pair beautifully with food, which I'm gonna enjoy later on this evening. Hope you guys enjoy. Cheers.